And once they're gone, I'm so afraid
Their stories are going to be lost.
that it's going to be lost. You know, and it may not come to light again for a long time.
One of the reasons that I feel compassionate about doing this is I want to get the story from the actual person's mouth.
Yes.
I don't want somebody else to kind of relive or tell that story. So that's why it's real important for us to get it from your experience. And Vicki, one of the reasons why you were chosen, Mrs. Hurley, actually two. One was the Urban League part, but two, the family business and how long it's been in existence. So if you can kind of share some of that with us as well too. And today is really just we're going to just ask a few questions, but I don't want you to tell me the whole story. I want you to save it for the video. And Brian, feel free to chime in. Her son Brian's here too.
Well, actually, you know, it's sort of fortuitous. Yesterday, I was kind of straightening up and cleaning up and looking through some things that ran across a history of the funeral home in the Hurley, one of the Hurley reunion books.
Okay.
So I might, you know, just if you like, make a copy.
Sure, I'd love to, and I can come back and we can come back.
No, I mean, I've got a copy.
Okay.
Machine. If you turn the machine on for me, back in the copy in the computer, just turn on the printer.
Oh, okay.
And then I can make copies.
Now, Mrs. Hurley, you mentioned that you were born in Charlotte, or you lived in Charlotte?
Born.
Okay. And how did you get to Columbia?
Well, I married a man from Columbia.
Okay. And how did you guys meet?
We went to high school, a boarding high school together in North Carolina.
Okay.
It was Palmer Memorial Institute in Sedalia, North Carolina, which is outside of Greensboro.
Okay. Is that in relation to the Palmer here?
No.
No relation? Okay.
It was named after Alice Freeman Palmer, who was a lady in Boston. And this was back in the early 1900s.
Okay.
When Nanny Burroughs and Charlotte Hawkins Brown and what's the lady that was with Roosevelt?
Mary McLeod.
Mary.
Okay.
All of those ladies started schools for blacks, you know, because that it was right after the Civil War, and blacks were becoming educated and needed higher schools of learning and that sort of thing. So Charlotte Hawkins Brown, who was born in North Carolina, went to Boston to be educated and came back to North Carolina in like 1908 or something like that.
Okay.
And started this little school for black students in rural North Carolina.
Okay.
And then eventually she grew it into a prep school.
It was a boarding school.
Yeah, boarding. It was a boarding high school, and children came there from all over the United States.
Okay. And so you guys met in high school?
And we had students there from Sierra Leone and Bermuda and Haiti. So, you know, I can go almost anywhere
Okay.
and know somebody.
Is the school still in existence?
No, it closed in 1972.
Do you think it was because of desegregation?
No. It was, yeah, partly. The original president died.
Okay.
And she had a designated person that she hand selected to run the school. And then after that person retired, they got a man to run it. And this was during the sit-ins and the protest area.
Okay.
And the students burned down the classroom building,
Oh.
the Alice Freeman Palmer building. So after that, the school just kind of went down and they closed it.
Okay.
It was closed.
So let's get back to you meet this handsome guy from South Carolina.
Well, my husband came there in I went in the 8th grade.
Okay.
And he came in the 9th grade. So we knew each other, but, you know, we weren't an item or anything.
Okay.
But after I finished college, I went to work for a radio station in Atlanta, and he was dating a young lady who taught at Spelman.
Okay.
So when he would come down to see her, he would stop by, the radio station to say hello to me.
Okay.
So, so one day he called and said, "Don't make any plans for this weekend. I'm coming down." So I said, "Okay." And the weekend came and he didn't show up.
Okay.
So the next weekend he showed up but didn't call. So I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I couldn't come last weekend because I had a funeral." So then he had another friend who was married and lived there and had 2 little children. So he said, "Well, we're going to go by Jackie's house." So we went over there and, just spent a while visiting. And then later on, he said, "Well, I've decided I'm ready to get married. And you're the one I want to marry."
Wow.
So I said, "Okay." So we did. We got married, and we've got 3 children.
Okay. You want to say something, Brian?
I didn't know that story.
So what year did you get married?
61.
1961.
Okay, so you
Because he
got
was
married.
born in 62.
So you got married in 61, moved to Columbia.
He lived in Columbia, so I
Okay.
moved to Columbia.
Okay, so you moved to Columbia.
Yeah.
And what was the inspiration behind the Urban League?
Well, I'm a social worker, and while I was working for the radio station, I lived across the street with a family, right across the street from Clark and Morehouse and Atlanta University. And at that time, Whitney Young was the president of the School of Social Work. He was the dean of the School of Social Work. But he gave me a scholarship because that was during the integration time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on a committee that he chaired in Atlanta that was focusing on the integration process. And so he said to me one day, "Alice, you ought to be a social worker." And I said, "Well, what do social workers do?" Because I wasn't. So then he said, "Well, you need to be a community social worker." Well, he gave me a scholarship. So I said, "Well, I might as well take advantage of this scholarship." So I went to a school of social work.
Okay.
In the
And-
master's program.
In the master's program. And then I worked part-time still at the radio station.
But you were still in Atlanta at the time.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is in Atlanta, the Atlanta School of Social Work.
Okay.
So like I said, I lived across the street, but I worked for the radio station. So then the radio station allowed me to go to school and work for them part-time. And so I did. That was my first year. The second year, the Ford Foundation sent him to Harvard to groom him to become the executive director of the National Urban League. So he was away from the campus that year. But, and then I graduated and I came here. And I saw him somewhere where he was giving a speech, and I said, "Whitney, they don't have a urban league in Columbia." And I said, "In fact, they don't have an urban league anywhere in South Carolina." So he didn't say anything. So then the next time I saw him, I said, "Whitney, they still don't have an urban league in Columbia." So he said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you 2 of my field representatives." So he did. He sent Harvey Kearns and another man, I can't remember. But they came here and we sat in the living room here and we talked about it. And he said, "Well, the first thing you have to do is put together a board." So we hand selected, we picked and we asked.
Are any of those people still living, your original board members?
I am. Let me see. I gave JT my program from the initial
Yeah, I was there when you gave it to
installation.
him.
Yeah. I have some of these things here, and I'm trying to see who was on the board. The original board.
And we can get some of that stuff for like when we do the master taping.
I'm not sure that any of them are still living.
Okay.
But we put together an integrated board. Alice Spearman, who was a progressive white person here in Columbia. George Wallace, who was a businessman here. I'm trying to think out. The dean of the School of Social Work here
Mm-hmm.
was on that board, and then some of the prominent, black leaders here
Okay.
in Columbia, and we put together the board. It took like a couple of years.
Okay.
And then, in '67, I think he came, Whitney did, and Whitney Young did, and installed the Columbia
Okay.
Urban League. And Daisy Dunn Johnson was the first executive director. And then they had several directors after that, before JT
Okay.
came on board. But he's been here for years and years, so he's Mr. Urban League.
Yeah, I moved here in '91, and I think he was the director.
And so he's really done wonders with.
So with the Urban League, were you guys involved with any of the school desegregation or the sit-ins or any of the prominent movements of that period?
The mission of the Urban League is to facilitate the process. It doesn't agitate. Like the NAACP, they would do the sit-ins and that sort of thing. The Urban League would bring people of diverse backgrounds and together to address a problem and to get programs going that would help the people.
Okay.
So they were not always in the forefront of the movement, but they were in the background getting things done.
Okay, so if you can maybe think about, and you don't have to tell me now, maybe one or two stories that you think that you want to make sure that the kids know about. You don't necessarily have to tell me about it now, but think about maybe one or two stories from that era, anywhere from, I think you said 67, let's say 67 to 79. Any prominent things that you want
You mean related to the Urban League?
related to the Urban League?
I have to think about that.
Yeah, you don't have to tell it to me now.
Because there's nothing dramatic. You know what I mean?
Well, it
The
may not
Urban
be.
League is not a dramatic organization.
It may not
It's a
feel like
working
it's big for
organization.
you, but it, just little things. Like I know, so if Brian was born in '62, that meant when you went to school, schools were newly desegregated.
Yes. In fact, when I went to work for Richland School District 1, because when I first came here, I worked at Crass Farrell as a psychiatric social worker. But then after I started having children, it was more advantageous to me to work, the school year.
Okay, so you were a teacher?
No, I was a school social worker.
School, okay.
So I went with the school district in 1967. And the schools here were just beginning to desegregate.
Okay, so if you can tell us about some of those experiences, that would be great too.
Well, I worked with 22, I was a Title I social worker when I first